Okay, one more time. Strategic planning in Malaysian government policies provide a framework for various government organizations to plan and to accomplish government's overall socio-economic objectives. Okay, that is including budget preparation, annual budget preparation. Okay, previously was under the Ministry of Economic Affairs, where in Prime Minister Office, we have a very significant unit, Economic Planning Unit, okay, play an important role in the planning and controlling activities of Malaysian government, and then with other agencies. Right, the planning process proposal can be initiated at the agencies as well as ministries. And definitely the cabinet ministers, the prime ministers provide the leaderships, okay? And then it will be submitted to cabinet divisions, so the prime minister department, and deliberated at the cabinet level before it will be tabled to the parliament if it is needed, so, right? So that's how you can see various initiatives have been developed by the government. Okay, these are the agencies involved. Okay, National Planning Council. Okay, there are also Economic Action Plan Council, National Action Plan. Okay, National Development Planning Committee. So if you look at the important, these are all the members are basically members of Parliament. But if you look at the secretariats, EPU, okay, very important. Then ICU, Implementation and Coordination Unit. These are at the execution level. That's why ICU and EPU are very important, you know, and they are under Prime Minister Office. Okay. Planning, Coordination and Evaluation Machinery. These are the three council. Okay, National Planning Council, Development, and okay, of course now is National Security. But I think our focus is on these two, National Planning as well as National Development Council, with EPU and ICU as their secretariats. But ICU, these are the, in ICU as well as Public Service Department. These two departments are monitoring for all government agencies. Do they achieve the objective of government as a government organizations? Okay, otherwise, if the government organizations they're not performing, then ICU as well as Public Service Division department can basically put the organization in transition. So they basically come in and provide transition administration before new management can take over. Okay, because at the end they must make sure that the organization function as government machinery or government agencies. Right, planning horizon in Malaysia. Okay, we have long-term national development, more than 5 years, okay, including Vision 2020. It started from a new economic policy in 1970s. And that's the point where there's a long-term plan. Then continue with the national development policy, but now we are at the stage of Vision 2020, and which is extended to 2030 already. Yeah. And then we have medium-term plan, which is 5 years. Okay, these are Malaysian plan we call it, right? For 5 years that lay down all the development projects, okay, that is needed by the country. So I think now we are also at the transition where we should move to another for the next plan. Okay, so that's why the relevant policies need to be developed so that country can move to the future. That basically to serve the best interest for all Malaysians. And with the long-term plan, so that's why we have the annual budget. Okay, so the annual budget, which is 1 year, okay, going to be tabled. Inshallah this Friday by the Minister of Finance. And of course that will combine both the operating budget as well as development budget. Need to be approved by the Parliament. Okay, so these are the example of the long-term plan as well as Malaysian plan. Okay, so now we are on 11th, ended by this year. So next year we have a new plan. So I think in this coming Friday as well, so they will table the next Malaysian plan. Okay, so we have to see, because the Malaysian plan means that will be the plan for the next 5 years. Okay, kind of strategic planning as well. Okay, and I think within the context of up to 2030, isn't it? So by right, I think if you based on this national vision policy, which is the idea is from the Prime Minister 4 and 7, which is Tun Mahathir. But then by right, in this year we achieve the developed nation status. Okay, this country. I think a state that is considered as developed state is Selangor. Selangor is basically has announced that they have that developed status. Okay, whereas then for Malaysia, of course, they need to meet criteria to become developed nation, right? Okay, economic planning unit functions, and before that, in the previous administration, it was Ministry of Economic Affairs. And then with the new administration, they call it as senior minister, still held by Dato' Azmin Ali. And so, but the underlying unit is basically EPU. Okay, so these are all units that you can get involved, and it is good if you can get involved at the higher level of the government. Okay, so you can aim for employment on all these areas. Okay, formulate policies and strategies for socio-economic development. Okay, I think the word socio-economic development is understood in a way that okay, we need economic development, but for the best interest for the masses. Okay, basically for Malaysian citizens. Prepare medium and long-term plans. Prepare development programs and projects budget. Okay, so the EPU is basically in charge of development budget. Monitor and evaluate the achievement of development programs. Okay, so you plan, you need to monitor the achievement. Advise government on economic issues. Initiate and undertake necessary economic research. Plan and coordinate the privatization program and evaluation. So you can see that the basically economic development planning is under EPU. Okay, example of major government policies, Look East policy, Malaysian Incorporated, all these are in 1980s. Poverty Eradication Initiative, okay, these are quite recently. Road Safety Initiative, SME Entrepreneurship Scheme, okay, including facilities for export assistance, marketing, and grants. So a lot of, I think for business development, it's a lot of grants provided by the government. Not only loans, it's also in the form of grants. So it's just that how creative the entrepreneurs are for them to grab the opportunities. Because even in 1980s or 90s, when government tried to attract foreign direct investment, or basically focusing on technology transfer, so they basically provide grants to multinational companies to open up their facilities and plants in the country. So you can see that. So it's not simply they come and basically they use their own funding. Okay, they basically rely on Malaysian government funding for them to open up their plants in Malaysia. Of course, these are for mutual interest. Definitely, they come and to share their expertise. Okay, I think this we have done this. So I continue with any question if I move on to outcome-based budgeting. Okay, so we look at outcome-based budgeting. So this has been implementing for quite a few years now. I think it provides is a basically continuation or improvement. I would say continuation from outcome-based budgeting. Okay. No, I mean modified MBS, modified budgeting system. Okay. But you I think you need to be able to see differences, how OBB try to bring or improve the budgeting system. Right, so you look at this, the implementation. Yeah, in terms of concepts, it started in 2010, right? And then there is secular. So full implementation is basically 2016 onward. Okay. Background of OBB, a platform to realize national transformation policy. Okay, so this policy is basically by the previous government, not the previous government, by the government led by Datuk Sri Najib, delegating more autonomy to program controllers on resource management. Okay, so this is, program controllers, right? I would say it's almost similar to controlling officers, or because at the level of program, right? So these are in terms of budget, is basically controlling officers. So delegating more autonomy or more flexibilities, right? Budget flexibilities. So this is consistent with the previous budget, which is MBS. Improving the accountability of public sector at all levels. Okay, this is interesting because this is also an improvement as compared to MBS. Because MBS, the accountability is between, I think you look at the structure as well as the process. In terms of structure, it was the accountability, if you look at program agreement, is the contract between controlling officers and the treasury. Okay, whereas in OBB, it says improving the accountability via strengthened governance framework. So they have national result framework as well as ministry result framework. Okay, so in a way that because this is promoted directly by the Prime Minister. Okay, so so in terms of governance structure, definitely is stronger. Okay. 6 transformation levels under outcome-based budgeting focus on outcomes, right? So maybe definitely should be an enhanced as compared to outcome-based modified budgeting system, because in modified budgeting system also, they mention about outcomes and impact. Vertical alignment of national priorities and ministry activities, right? So in other words, all ministry activities must be linked to the national priorities, right? So there are national planning framework, okay? So that is basically the ministry need to be aligned with that, not only simply for budgeting purposes, where the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Finance highlighting the priorities for the year. Managing cross-cutting initiatives, okay, because so in a way that it become more centralized in terms of budgeting process. Coordination of operating and development budget. Okay, so that is new under outcome-based budgeting, because in the previous budgeting techniques focusing only operating budget. Okay, whereas here, because of the nature of centralization of outcome-based budgeting, so that enable and also Prime Minister Office become a center of basically very active in the budgeting process. Okay, so then there is a possibility of coordination between operating and development budget. Accountability in public sector and authority over resources. Okay, of course, enhanced accountability. Systematic monitoring and evaluation system. So by right, okay, they have that information system that can support this reform. Are you with me, class?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Hello?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Right. So the design of outcome-based budgeting, program-based approach budgeting. Okay, so there's also a continuation of program-based budgeting. You can see that the funding process based on program. I think that's the the techniques has been used. It's known and being tested from time to time for the treasury as well as for the government as a whole. And with each programs, so budget are developed based on outcome and predetermined results. Okay, so it's not simply based on past year spending, but the focus is on the future outcomes and results. And very strong. But in terms of KPIs development, okay, in terms of the narrative of outcome and impact, so this is not new. It's been introduced since a program-based, enhanced in modified budgeting. So it should be more useful in outcome-based budgeting. Strengthening roles and responsibility for Ministry of Finance, UPE, okay, the planning unit, and the public service development department. You can see this better coordination between them, okay, because they are major policy-based departments. Alignment of ministerial program with a national result framework. Okay, so more direct linkage. They can map directly. So what they are what program activities at ministries with the national result framework. Medium-term perspective in planning and budgeting. Okay, because medium term, I think referring to the 5 years. So more strategic in that sense. Strengthening performance management. Okay, so more, KPIs should be improve the use of KPI, definitely in terms of monitoring of KPIs, okay, between ministries. I think in outcome-based budgeting, last time, the Prime Minister himself is basically monitoring the minister KPIs so that it becomes very strong, okay? Not only the Treasury, okay, the Treasury. Whereas under MBS, it is expected KPIs being monitored by the Treasury, okay, so there's a gap there. Delegation of power to controlling officers, okay, as mentioned, more power. Incentive for results. Then they promote. I think this is possible when public service department involved, definitely, because they are in charge of promotion of government servants. Then you can see that the direct link between budgeting performance as well as promotion opportunities. Right, planning for outcome, right? Budgeting is laid out in a result framework. Budgeting for outcome, okay, and definitely once you have budget, there's a monitoring process. Okay, monitoring for performance. It can be monthly, it can be quarterly. Generally for budget, definitely it's a monthly monitoring for budget, but for performance, for KPIs, at least quarterly. Okay, because sometimes KPIs cannot be visible so quickly. Okay, the non-financial KPIs and result reporting. Okay, so you can see the structure. Right, this is related to the transformation program, and then how that relates to the outcome-based budgeting. Okay, so these are all was introduced by the previous, during the Datuk Seri Najib time. I think the planning was good, and then the next, PH, okay, because they are short term. Okay, they bring into many reforms. Okay, but I think many good reforms has been introduced. Okay, I think one of them definitely they want to for the infrastructure for fiber optics. Okay, so that Malaysia can move on to higher level of telecommunication and communication technology now, because every country now moved to 5G. Okay, is that the latest 5G for communication technology, or much faster? I think, but generally people talk about 5G, right? So more analysis, more data processing, all that. So they are moving towards that. And also definitely the PH government try to promote more transparency and all that. Okay. Okay, and Right. So these are the linkage between the ministry as well as at the government at the top level. National Result Framework. So there are 5 trusts there at the national level. But the details you can check. Okay. What are the key result areas 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for each trust. So, but the focus, you can see that creating an environment for unleashing economic growth. Okay. So I think that's basically for economic well-being. Moving towards inclusive socio-economic development. It shouldn't be, I mean, for all Malaysians, shouldn't be left behind in socio-economic development. Developing and retaining a first world talent base. I think that's also basically we talk about human capital development. Right. So if we want to move, I think the focus was on moving the income level from because Malaysian need to be promoted so that they can earn higher income level that link with the developed status with high income nation. Right. So one of the key initiative was to retain talents. That's why I think during those time, government have active initiatives to bring in back all Malaysians across the globe, from US, from developed nations, from other countries. So all this with their experience in different countries so that they can share their expertise in Malaysia. Okay, number 4, building an environment that enhances quality of life. Okay. Lastly, for the government, transforming government. Generally, I think if you look at any public sector reforms, so one of them definitely is government reform. Okay, they want to support all this national agenda, so the government machineries must be well equipped as well. Okay, so at the national level, be translated to the ministries. Because at the end, the implementation units will be at ministry and agencies. Okay, so you can see this, right? So from the national programs, based on the national result framework, then it must be directly linked to ministry level result framework. But then you can understand, because you understand modified budgeting system. So when all these KPIs, so all these need to be revised so they're inconsistent with national result framework. But in terms of programs, in terms of activity, all these are similar to modified budgeting system. Okay, that's why I provide this slide, okay, comparing between MBS and outcome-based budgeting. So you can see that under ministry level, so all basically based on MBS, and the top level, okay, been introduced under outcome-based budgeting. So more coordination in that sense, okay, focusing on the key result areas. Rather than just bottom up, so it kind of both. Bottom up approach, so based on the ministry and the agency's needs, okay, what they understood about the needs of their target groups, and whereas at the top down, okay, so will provide a bigger overview of what is needed for the country, because Malaysia, I think the planning, that's why a country like Malaysia, we have development plan, okay. Unlike other countries, particularly developed countries, sometimes they don't have specific development plan. Whereas for developing countries, generally, we have development plan. Okay, so in other words, the government have development agenda. I think these are one of the critical elements of developing countries. But there are also other countries where they don't have any development agenda, okay, for some reason. So these are countries need to be move up the ladder in terms of development. Okay, but from this side, you can see clearly the link between MBS and outcome-based budgeting. Because the idea is if you want to introduce new system, okay, so it cannot be entirely new, because execution need to be quick. Okay, so that's why it is complementing. Right, so this clearly shows based on the national result framework, and then with the ministry level as well as all these, the key element there to be able to provide all those links is basically the KPIs. And that's why in this outcome-based budgeting, the monitoring of, there is ministry KPI. So the minister's KPI, who look after the minister's KPI, who monitor the minister's KPI is the Prime Minister. Okay, so this is what I think the main difference as opposed to MBS, where the KPIs are being monitored. Of course, there are, I mean, this is for budget purposes, for budget purposes. For budgeting purposes, the KPIs was monitored by the Treasury, okay, with regards to program agreement. Whereas an outcome-based budgeting is specifically monitored by the Prime Minister office or by Prime Minister himself. Right, so to see the linkage here, you can see this clearly. Right, okay, to achieve the developed nation. National Plan, Vision 2020, Developed Nation Status, and then there is national programs, ministry outcome, ministerial programs and activities. Okay, I think you can look at this example. There are 3 national programs, okay, improve literacy rate, eradication of poverty and crime reduction. Right, so for eradication of poverty, there are 3 ministries supporting that programs, that policy. Okay, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Rural Development, and Ministry of Tourism. Then under Ministry of Agriculture, so based on the programs under the ministry. Okay, so training of farmers, consolidation of farms, upgrading of farms infrastructure. Okay, so and all these need to be done for both, for the budget development budget as well as for the operating budgets. Okay, I think generally for development budget, okay, so that's why for every government agency, so you need to understand as well from which source of budget that they fund their main activities. Okay, so you know main activities. I think every organization they must have main activities. Okay, like UIA, the main activities is education, like IUM. Okay, like let me see, okay, for rural development. Okay, so their main activities is rural development. Yeah. Okay, let me see examples some of you. Are you still with me, class?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. Yeah, for public transport, okay, public transportation. Okay. So let's say public transport ministry. Okay, and possibly you can see the RTD, road transport department. Okay, so their main activity will be, okay, you can see that they are enforcing the regulation, right, for road safety and others. So their main activities, okay, so the issue is which budget is basically funding their main activities. Of course, most government agencies, the main is operating budget, okay, but there are also government agencies where their main funding is basically development budget. So you have to somehow get to know that. But generally, I mean, the easy one to observe is basically development budget is for capital expenditure. Okay, I think for private sector we call it capital expenditure. Okay, for government they call it development budget. Projects for development budget. Okay, so they don't really have assessment on the capital expenditures. Okay, if they're not non-commercial entities. There are commercial entities definitely. If they have commercial activities, okay, some government agencies they have commercial activities. Definitely, capital expenditure assessment need to be undertaken. Okay, so you can see that, particularly if you look at government companies, government-owned companies, okay, they are, I mean, they're just like private entities, and they do all sorts of analysis, okay, for them to be able to execute to determine the feasibility of the projects. Right. Okay, support for outcome-based budgeting. With OBB, the Accountant General will implement the following initiative to support the new budgeting system. So one of them, accrual accounting. So this one, I think that's the major, the main change. Accrual accounting. Okay, by right, by 2021. So by next year, it will be the first annual report prepared under accrual. But nevertheless, accrual accounting, okay, can be very, very relevant for both internal reporting as well as external reporting. Okay, but if you see that this is outcome-based budgeting, so more for internal reporting. Okay, if they can provide internal report based on accrual accounting information. Okay, because accrual accounting is good because it can provide full cost information. Okay, so if you remember in under MBS, okay, they have one of the key performance measure was unit cost, and that unit cost is prepared under accrual accounting. Okay, but at that time, the accounting system still cash-based. Okay, so how difficult it is. So that's why there was an initiative to introduce, they call it micro accounting system. This is particularly for departments, because department heavily dependent on the accountants general department for their accounting services. Whereas for statutory bodies, okay, I mean, generally statutory bodies, they adopt accrual accounting for their reporting as well. Okay, that's second, activity-based costing. Okay, so you can see how serious it is for them to improve their decision making, and basically for resource allocation and for costing of the activities, and improvement in the IT system. They call it government financial and managerial accounting. Okay, implementation challenges. Okay, these are possible challenges. Insufficient number of trainers to cascade outcome-based knowledge at program or activity level. Difficulties to appoint a qualified person who can be a point of contact for every agency, so that they become expert or reference point for the new initiative. Government agencies may need to combine, divide, omit, and redefine some activities, definitely, okay, so that it become consistent with the national result framework. OBB requires ministries and agencies to adopt, identify relationships between spending and expected results, okay, between inputs and outputs. Difficult task for manager and agency to identify and estimate activity costs that will be eventually linked to outcomes. Adoption of new management information system as well as accounting information system that can complement outcome-based budgeting. Okay, if you think about how government organization to implement activity-based costing, okay, so that can be a serious challenges, okay, because the step taken to implement activity-based costing, okay, so massive investment is needed. To assist the managers in agency in managing and distributing resources from activities more effectively. Okay, so these are possible challenges. So in other words, they need to plan so that the system is effective as it's supposed what it's supposed to achieve. Okay, any question?
Sir.
Okay.
So basically, OBB is just introduced during the Najib tenure, isn't it?
Yes. Because during his time, he introduced this economic transformation policy. Okay, and to be able to do that, so he introduced this outcome-based budgeting and government transformation policy (GTP). Okay, I think pretty much in terms of structure and system, the PH government also continue in terms of administration systems, but they introduce new improvement with the new initiatives that is more linked or aligned to modified-based budgeting. So you can see improvement for administration, for the budgeting process. It's an ongoing effort. Okay, so then what are their source of reference or knowledge? So it's because our government organizations, they are Okay, of course the competency of civil servants themselves are very good. Okay, they are well trained. If you look at top management, okay, they receive training from good organizations or good education center. Okay, and that's one. The other is knowledge sharing between countries, right? And then they also have consultants, okay, international consultants that can help them. And but definitely feedbacks. I think even the use of international consultant may not be effective if no direct involvement of the public servant themselves, because they are the executors, implementers. So their feedback are critical because knowledge is with them, how to serve to provide better services, because they understand their customer needs better. Okay, and so in that sense, but in terms of upskilling of skills, knowledge sharing, I think all this is happening as we speak in the organization, in the government organizations. Okay, any other question? Well, this morning you are very quiet.
No, sir.
Okay, clear as crystal. I think for today, I'll stop presenting. For today, maybe just a quick, maybe I want to see everybody's face. You quickly show your 49. Possible. Where are my students? So 3, 1. Maybe you can show your face quick before we end this session. Quickly. 1 or 2 minutes. Cannot fit in 41. Can, isn't it? It's coming. So let me change layout. Yeah, 49. It's possible. Okay. Is that all? Everybody? Okay, never mind. So you can follow the class?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.